Come back, Patreon subscribers and heart warriors, for the energy tips for week 9, that is the 23rd of February till March 1st. All right, I hope you've already watched the energy update. There I kind of introduced the themes here for this coming week, and once more, like what it actually is that affects our energies here. It's an orange week, a week of deep healing. So maybe compared to the last 2 weeks where many of you felt a little lost in inner processing, especially etheric processing that I mentioned in the energy tips, you'll feel this a little lighter, okay? There are some things though that we have to consider, and I want to really dive into some of the setups, the things that point at this karmic task, this karmic role that we all take on here as human beings, as spiritual beings in a human body. So the relation and the reality that we're perceiving, and why this is so difficult sometimes to see through and to discern truth. Also, really important for next week is that we understand the importance of embodiment, that we understand how important it is that we occupy and inhabit our own space fully on all levels, on the physical, on the emotional, even mentally, conceptually, in our relationships, spiritually and energetically. Okay, this is where the boundary work comes in, which is so, so important for us. We have to learn how to identify these entrapments, be it our toxic relationships that we perhaps in, or the things that we repeatedly experience with our families, false idols, false beliefs, and how this affects our decision making. All right, so we cannot really make decisions based on truth, guys, if we don't know how to discern truth. So we're still, and we will always be, in this process of getting closer to truth, getting closer to our true self, to what we truly want, what we truly feel, what we truly need, who we truly are, who we truly want to be. All right, so this is basically why you're here, why you're listening to this. This is the foundation of self-healing. All right, and with it then, and this will come in very strongly next week, really understanding the power of love and self-love. I can give you this tiny little heads up, because you guys, most of you, the heart warriors, will be in the energetic adjustment session tomorrow night. In March is going to be a little easier, so there's going to be less stress in regards to the relationships that you are in, because we'll move into a time where things are sort of literally rebirthed, where you come to that point of conclusion where you are clear to make decisions, where you're clear to make a stance, where you are finally in that place that you can see that you have choices. All right, and this will empower you. All right, so what is so difficult about this time right now is that we are still in a little bit of brain fog about some of the aspects of reality, identity, and who we truly are, what we truly want. All right, so this is just a roundup here for next week. The chakras involved, guys, is our 1st and 6th together. So again, this is, the karmic aspect of how we present ourselves in this world, how we see the world, and how we can see the larger picture, like our karmic family ties, our early experiences, our childhood conditioning, and how this plays into our perception. So it's really important to understand, that you realize that your perception of yourself, the world that you're in, the relationship that you're in, the job that you're in, and even the perception of your, choices in life has to do with your energetic state, has to do with, sort of where you're at. And for most of it, it's really, really difficult to identify where we are at, and therefore identify that, the choices that we have are limited in these moments when our energetic state is limited. Okay, so I'm hoping to help you to navigate through this a little more by pointing out those markers for you that can help you to identify this a little better. In personal energy coachings, obviously, we train you to identify energetic states and develop reference feelings for them. And you know this, through this continual going into this deeper transmission state with yourself and building the relationship with your true self. That is ultimately, what allows you to do this on your own. But the first and the sixth chakra is the one that is responsible for this tension that we're feeling, and also for the fog, because when our perception is limited and we cannot see the larger picture or cannot contextualize it, then we often feel entrapped. We often feel like we don't have any choices. Now, at the same time, we have a really, really strong influx of our third chakra. That's our willpower, that's our life force, sort of communing with our fifth chakra, with the way we express ourselves. And there is where most of you have an issue. So if you feel still a little confused about what I'm talking about, then don't take this as you are not good enough, or you have to try harder, or you need to accumulate anything more. On the contrary, guys, this journey to our true self, the journey to really finding and embodying our true self, is a journey of letting go of attachments, of letting go of these energetic ties that we've accumulated in the course of our lives. It's not a journey of accumulating more knowledge or more techniques or anything. It's just really, really important that you understand this. All right. So the third and the fifth chakra here triggers that a little bit in you, the confusion there, and also the powerlessness that comes with feeling entrapped, that you feel you can't express yourself and you're losing your identity. Okay, so all these subjects of identity, they will come up here in this next week. And collectively, what is going to play out, I mean, obviously I'm not a fortune teller, I can't tell you exactly how this is going to play out, but I can tell you that this is going on, on all levels, on our personal level as well as, in businesses, in your business as well. Your identity has a lot to do with your business and your role, your social role, that you want to have with this. And also on a political level, because all power structures are sort of reconfiguring themselves right now, and we're seeing, talked about this many times, old power structures falling apart. And as there aren't, sort of this new identity isn't formed yet. Okay, there's a lot of problems in our society right now, and I just want to point out a few, besides obviously, the concerns about our planet, the environment, and so forth, but also social problems in regards to the new generations coming in and dealing with this overwhelmment through checking out, but also some aspects of or outcroppings of this collective shadow, which now takes form as narcissism. Those are really, really important subjects here, especially for us as empaths, because for us it's due to this propensity, due to the ability to feel other people's emotions and to pick up on collective energies. We are particularly at danger to get entrapped or get sort of blindsided, because it's so difficult for us sometimes to differentiate between what is ours and what isn't. And so you need to understand that these themes here that go through our collective, that they are not just yours, but they affect you first. Just like with the energy updates, where I say that these things have already happened to us, it's just a matter of delay, till that sort of hits the collective, and then it kind of echoes back to us, through our relationships. Okay. So the fall from the ivory tower, guys, that is something that came up here a lot, or will come up a lot, and that is, this electricity of our ego that I talked about. It comes from the third chakra, where you want to maintain a certain identity, and the more outer energies sort of forcing us into going into truth, the harder it is to keep that up. All right, and the more we feel subjectively, we feel we're suffering, okay? We don't know what it is, but really what it is the process of letting go of all those false identities, okay? The false self, and just really growing into embodying your true self, all right? So you can imagine that on a nation level, like say politically, you know, and those of you in the United States, in Germany, in France, in some other countries that are going through this transition right now, because there's this collective shadow part that is being triggered through that, okay, you will find no refuge from this. You're gonna have to really understand that this is inside job. You're gonna have to deal with all this from the inside. You cannot expect any external support here, simply because the external, you know, the world that we live in is dealing with its own shadow right now. So as an energetically sensitive and empath, you have the ability to navigate through this if you can embody all that you feel, which is your physical, your emotional, your mental, intellectual, your social, you know, your spiritual, and your energetic. Okay, so let's look at all these different layers of your human being. All right, so physically, I've already mentioned this in the energy update. A lot of you guys still have very intense dreams, you know, and this is always a sign that there's a lot of etheric processing going on, okay? But obviously also the psychologically that there's a lot of emotional processing going on. And you will maybe notice that your dreams have subjects such as trying to give you messages, you know, how to release things, how to let go of things, how to step over things, how to get through things, okay, as opposed to running away. This is a really, really important thing to notice when your dreams shift from, like, say, being chasing dreams, you know, to dreams where you can suddenly feel this core of yourself, you know, sending you messages. I'm not big on making dreams special or the visual perception that we have, because you know, there still is a lot of work underneath that needs to be done for you to really connect with this. This is what we train in all these transmissions. But you know, you can use this to pick up energy shifts within yourself, so your dreams can actually show you your entrapments, can show you your temptations, can show you your ego, can also show you what your medicine is and how you need to work through this. Okay, so don't run away from your dreams. Don't be afraid of your dreams. You know I was when I was a kid. That was terrifying for me because I couldn't contextualize it. Nowadays, you know, it's a welcome inner prompting. It's a welcome opportunity to communicate with my true self. A lot of you will feel issues with your jaw, with your teeth, you know, maybe swelling things underneath your teeth, in your jawbone, you know, abscesses or inflammations. Guys, this has to do with this whole control thing, all right? It comes in through this combination of third and fifth chakra, but also issues with your knees, with your legs, you know, with aspects that come from your childhood. And we're going to go a little deeper into this here, but also, you know, pertaining, you know, your ability to move forward or to make decisions, to make choices. All right, really strong, you know, for this week. My recommendation for you is to actively and consciously connect with your body. I recommended the I am breathing. I always recommend the I am breathing. And of course, needless to say, I recommend to drink lots of water. Those are basic things for empaths and energetically sensitives, you know, just to keep the flow in a good state. But this week, I really recommend you to go into this sensual embodiment that you really that you can really feel your body, that you can really feel your outer dimensions, you know, like sort of where does my body begin and where does it end? Okay, and a good way, I mean, I know that, you know, not all of you are big into taking baths or whatever, but a good way is to put body lotion on, you know, to do skincare. Skincare has a lot to do with, you know, the way you express yourself, all right? And Also, perhaps, shaving, if you're a male, but caring for your skin, because when you touch your own skin, not everyone has the budget to go get regular massages. Obviously, those work really well too, but then you can feel your body better. And also pay attention to how you dress, put up makeup on. All these self-care things help you to connect with your body better. All right, and try not to go into this like where you look at yourself in the mirror and you only see your wrinkles. Hey, these things are normal, okay? Don't feel bad about this. It has nothing to do with vanity, okay? This is about your relationship with your body. And another thing, this is more second chakra, but it comes in next week, is your relationship with food too, because food is part of what you ingest, and it plays such a big role in relating with ourselves. You can also use tapping, I mentioned the thymus tapping last week. So emotionally, this next week can be a little tricky because there's a little bit of an anxiety triggered in us. It has to do with shame and guilt, so it's at the lower level of fear, and it can trigger things such as a deep heartbreak or a sense of powerlessness, entrapment, okay. Also longing or craving for something that you can't really put a finger on, okay. So this is all about, your emotional attachments. I mentioned this, the psychological aspect of how we were conditioned to see love and how we connect with ourselves and others. And there's a lot of unrealistic expectations and so forth, that we have to let go. And this is the hard part. It can create heartbreak. It can create this longing, and there's a little bit of a grieving with it. So lung issues can come with that, just so you know. So it all points at this embodiment and setting proper boundaries, not having this fear of setting boundaries because you feel guilty, or you feel selfish. Okay, this needs to be overcome. The empath, the energetically sensitive, needs to learn how to overcome this. This is very particular about the way you perceive yourself and your environment. Okay. Also understand that these heartbreaks or these longings, can come from this feeling unappreciated. This is a choice, guys. Okay, this appreciation that you're longing for, or validation, is something that you really need to give yourself from within. Okay, and if you can't, well, then there are reasons there, and oftentimes you find these reasons in, when you go to therapy, you can learn this, in the way you were conditioned as a child. So I want to take a few minutes here to illuminate special conditions under which we can develop real big issues in regards to self-love, self-care, and boundaries. And that is when we have or had narcissistic parents. This is a very specific issue that is, for some reason, very common amongst empaths and energetically sensitives. And I'm not going to give you the whole roundup. That's, subject of a workshop. But I want you to understand that these mechanisms, that have led to you being confused about what is love, and, how you can give love to yourself as opposed to seeking it in the external. This is something that was programmed into you. It's not a reason for you to feel like a victim, but it is something that you truly, truly need to understand. So I want to give you a few markers here. What this looks like when you had a narcissistic parent as, child growing up. What were some of these super, super typical family dynamics that you could observe or weren't even aware of, but looking back, you can see them. So bear with me here. One of the things that as a result of having a narcissistic parent that you can identify in yourself is that you have a skewed view about what is actually lovable about you, and this expresses obviously in deservingness, how you feel like you deserve love, or whether you're good enough. So this I'm not good enough, or I have to try harder, I have to do more, and especially in regards to pleasing others, or in regards to anticipating other people's needs and compensating for it and working towards them, always going the extra mile, which also goes hand in hand with this validation thing, right? That can be a sign that you were raised by a narcissistic parent, because one of the main things that happen when you were raised by a narcissistic parent, and once more here, guys, this is not to point fingers at our parents, but to explain this to us so that we can better understand this, why we have these blind spots and these unconscious patterns, is, that we are basically alienated from developing a true sense of self. Okay, so the narcissistic parent sees us as an extension of themselves, and therefore, basically, sort of imprints their identity onto us. And the whole purpose of that is that we become great performers, that we, serve their needs, that we learn, that the way we can get love is through their validation. And you have to understand that if you got imprinted that way, you will always subconsciously feel that you're not good enough and that you have to try harder, that you have to do more. Okay, so the foundation of that is really that we have been raised to become a human doing and not a human being. And that's why this plays into this identity problem with ourselves so much, because we've never really actually had a chance to individuate, to develop our own sense of self. We were literally conditioned to believe that love is conditional. In other words, we receive this validation or love in many of our cases only if we performed in a certain way, only if we fulfilled the needs of our parent, or if we had successes. So many of us, really only remember ever, getting true affection when we won with our sports team, or when we had degrees to celebrate, or when we made a lot of money. And so many of us have not just been alienated from the sense of ourselves, but also from what defines us and what makes us lovable. All right, so we have this fixation on how we perform. And I know that this is something that many of you struggle with. Okay, so you've got to understand that there is a setup there through the way you were raised. Okay, and the way out of that is through self-healing, through self-work, because you've never really had a chance to do this when you needed to do this between the age of like 1 and 5. All right, so there is this constant inner voice, that tells you that you don't have the right to do this, or that you cannot do this, or that you cannot do this without permission, or that you have to wait for something, or that it has to, be successful, that you can't make mistakes, or else love is being taken away from you, or the validation. And this sits so deep that a lot of the pain and the patterns that you get stuck in, in your relationships, that they don't really have anything to do with your partner. They have something to do with you, not understanding, what you got imprinted by, and you need to learn the techniques that can help you to break through this. So the healing path here is the path of really looking into your ego, looking into the attachments, into the addictions, and the ways you were trained, to cope with this, and seeing them for what they are. Those are implants. Those are conditionings that you've experienced, and this goes very, very far in some of our cases, because having a narcissistic parent can really screw with the way you communicate, with the way you present yourself, and with the way you conduct business, with the way you conduct relationships, with your parenting. Okay, even if you are so lucky and have not become a narcissist. But, to be honest with you, from what I'm seeing, having been raised by a narcissistic parent gives you very few choices. You either become a narcissist yourself, or you become a codependent, because you've been literally trained to become a codependent. Okay, and this is why so many of us empaths, that have that ability to feel and to anticipate other people's needs, have so much issues with this, with codependency, because we never actually learned to tune into our own needs because of the priming that we have. And this is also the reason why you have this tremendous amount of narcissist empath relationships, and why it's so difficult for us to identify the toxicity of this relationship. We're literally seeing the narcissist, through the glasses, through the eyes of our inner child, right? And it feels so familiar. And it's a karmic relationship that we are feeling pulled into, thinking we found our soulmate. Guys, don't feel bad when you are or have experienced this, because this is part of seeing those energetic dynamics as clear as day, why we do have to fall for this, why we do run into these traps, because our energy is set up like that. And this is what we're for here, to help you identify this within yourself so that you can prevent this, so that you can empower yourself to break out of these cycles, and so that you can heal from this and really embody your own true self identity. All right, so moving on to the mental layer of our energy body here for next week. This is all about choices, and I want to bring this aspect of decision making in here, and why this can be difficult when there's identity problems, okay? Because if you look at your life, if you look at who you are, right, your story, what is your story? Okay, some aspects of your story have to do with your karmic setup, okay? Those were things that, you didn't really pick those, at least not consciously, but on a true self level, we did pick them in order to have a specific healing experience so that we can evolve out of a karmic attachment, okay? So yes, if you look at it from an energetic point of view, we did pick our karmic circumstances and our narcissistic parents or our karmic relationships, but in order to mature through them, in order to learn how to grow out of them, in order to break that karmic family cycle, all right? So let's just put this aside. What defines you as a person, are all the different choices that you make in your life. It's all your yeses and your nos, okay? And your yeses and your nos, they are determined by your perception, right? Because the choices you think you have to do with how you perceive where you're at. Okay, this is something that I covered in the energy update, because when your energetic state is low, then the choices you have are limited. When your ability to see through or discern truth is low, then you will feel like you don't have many choices. And so many of us, have made choices in the past based on this limited perception. And so some of our story, we may want to see ourselves as victims, but truly, we are victims, but not for what we think. We're victims because we didn't know yet how to better manage our energy so that we could see that we had more choices. So yes, subjectively, we didn't have any choices. But this is why you're here, to learn that by shifting your energy, you can have more choices. And with that, literally change your story. Change your identity, change your role, not into another false version of it, but into the true version of it, okay? Namely based on true perception, on how you truly see yourself. And therefore, boundary work is such an important thing. It's instrumental for us as empaths, to learn, how we can, increase our choices by making healthier choices, even if we sometimes can't see why. So we have to reprogram ourselves. It's very important, because the conditioning that we have sets us up to only see certain choices. So in order to break the cycle and, to make healthier choices altogether, all right, we need to learn a few techniques, okay? Because this part in us is a bit confused. This is not something to feel guilty for, ashamed for, or sorry for. This is just, it just is. Okay, so when you can accept this, and this is a mental thing, you have to just accept that you can't trust your mind shit. You can't trust that critical inner voice, and you can't trust, your ego emotions shit, because they are the reflection of your lower states. Okay, and in order to weed through this and make better choices and set better boundaries, and not be confused about this, you're going to have to learn a few techniques to get past them. And that comes through your intellectual understanding. All right. This is what allows you to take your power back. And when you can take your power back, that's then when you feel worthy of love again. That's then when you can love and trust, and when you understand that unconditional love is something that we all deserve. No, regardless of our performance, regardless of the mistakes we make. I want to say, because of all the mistakes we make, because of all the conditioning that we have, nothing that predetermines us to be a victim or a victimizer, the resentful victim. Okay. So in your relationships, guys, next week, the social layer of your being, you got to understand that when it comes to these things, like who am I and what is my relationship and what is my role in this relationship, what is the role of this relationship, okay, you're going to have to look at all these, push, pull, power versus force, control patterns, okay, that are in your relationship, even the ones, that you are using yourself, the manipulation things, the tactics, and, it's okay. Don't feel bad about yourself as an empath, that you've misused, your energetic sensitivity to manipulate others. That's fine. You were conditioned to do this, so this is all part of inner child work, okay? So don't go into guilt and shame with this. On the other, instead, really see it for what it is, and that you now have the choice to make, better decisions. And then you have to sort of really go into this place of empowerment to make those decisions and move forward by letting go of the past, of your past attachments. Okay. Now, spiritual guys, I don't want to make this too long, but there is something that is very concerning, and this has to do with the spiritual entrapment. I'm going to talk about this next week, because this, plays directly into some of the things that we see, that we feel about past lives, about karma, and what the purpose of this is, and how we understand karma, and how, we can let to be believed, or how we can be, how we can be trapped into thinking that the way this is something that we need to endure. Okay, so when we talk about karma, it's very important to understand that this is not something you need to endure. This is something that traps you into your ego perception. Okay, and the true purpose here of all of us is to evolve out of our personal karma. Okay, and therefore, we can't really find the answers, by just sort of being all negative and seeing this all as a sort of apocalyptic or, karmic punishment. Okay, I've put up the quote here a while back, and I said the longer you stare in the abyss, the more the abyss is going to stare back at you. Just to give you a little bit of a heads up here, if you have to deal with demonic, Luciferian kind of views or visions, okay, I'll define what Luciferian is for you next week, because there's a lot of confusion about this, so don't be afraid. This has to do with energetic states, once more. And then finally, the energetic layer of your perception next week. Power and control aspects, they have energetic dynamics. You can sense them, you can feel them, you can see them as energetically sensitive. And this needs to be learned. You have to understand, how this all works, the dynamics of projection and absorption etherically, and, how this affects your personal energy, how it traps you, in certain states. Also, it'd be really good if you learn the difference between, sort of your mental, your brain heart, and your etheric heart. We call this the heart mind, and there'll be a great opportunity for that next week, by the way, when we have the Grace Mental Heart Fusion Marathon here at transCODES. But for now, it's really about learning, about the link between, karma, past life, past, present, and future. Okay, and this is something that we work in the future self-transmission this weekend, in the true self-transmission also this weekend, and of course the energetic adjustment session that's coming up tonight, sending March energies through your system and reading out, what your true self really communicates to you as your healing path, as your way to navigate through this. So guys, there's a lot of work to do. I hope to be your guide for this. Look up the events here, the training and healing sessions that we offer for all these energies, in order to get through them. And I hope this helped you, to identify a few more things. I'm going to hurry up to get this out to you as fast as I can. Love you. See you next week. Thank you for your support. Bye-bye.